Hello Stampers, my name is Linda Bedinger and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. And today I'd like to show you how I made this pretty little card. This is one that has been kind of floating around in my head. Wanted to do something with the varied vases. And let me show you the stamp set that I'm using. I'm using Vibrant Vases. I think there's limited amount of glare on that. And so what I'm using from this stamp set today is this vase, and I'm using this outline and then the piece that fills in. So this is a two-step stamping piece. And then I'm also using the leaves that go around the bottom of this cluster of flowers. And the sentiment I'm using is just for you. Now, on the paper here, what we need to make this card is I have a Whisper White base that is 8.5 by 5.5 scored and folded at 4 1/4. And it is the thick Whisper White. Give that another little burnish. And then I have a piece of real red. And my real red is 4 by 5 1/4, and that's my layering piece. Then I have another piece of Whisper White that is 3 3/4 by 5. That's going to fit right on top of there. Then out of the Botanical Butterfly paper, that wonderful butterfly paper that we have that's free in Celebration, I'm using the black and white dots on the back side of that paper. And this piece is 2 inches by 3 3/4. This particular piece is a little bit longer than that, so I'm just going to trim off the edge. Then you need a couple of pieces. You need at least a piece that is 4 inches by 1.5 maybe. Yeah, 1.5 at the minimum to cut out your vase and your flowers. And then on the inside, I did put an additional vase. So you need enough to cut out the 2 vases and the flowers. Now, I have done about 4 iterations of this this card. This is one I did when I did all of the stamping right on the face of the card. This one you'll see is raised, and the flowers on this are a little bit darker, and I think I kind of like that. This one has lighter flowers, again stamped on the card itself, and this is another one with raised detail where the flowers are very pale. And actually, of all of them, I think the ones I like the best are those flowers, so I'm going to try and replicate that for you today. The only other piece we need is a 1/4 inch strip of real red, and that's to go for our decoration on the inside. All right, let's just get started. So the very first thing we have to do is do some stamping. I have my pretty little vase mounted here, and then I'm using my Stamparatus to do some of the other stamping here. So I'm using my Momento black ink. I need my Pierce mat here to do my stamping because this is photopolymer. So I'm going to do a stamping of my vase, and I find that because of the way the punch works for punching out this vase, we're going to need to put this on this end so we can slide this in and get the punch to cut it out. Although I will admit that I really like this being cut very close to the edge, so maybe I'll just fussy cut it. It's such a simple stamp to fussy cut out, and if that's the case, then it doesn't matter where you put it. So I'm going to put a second vase down here. Now for my flowers, what I found that I had to do was set up my Stamparatus. So let me move this out of the way because of the 2-step stamping here. So I have my Stamparatus here. Grab it. And I always use my Stamparatus with a silicone mat in addition to the foam mat. And so I have my couple of doors set up on this. And the first thing I'm going to do, this is all set up to work on a piece of paper that is going to work up in this corner. So let me grab a piece of paper here and put my magnet down. And so the very first thing I did is stamp this flower in Sahara sand. And the reason I did that was so that I could see the image when I stamped, because it seems to work best to do it in this order, because it's the lightest one that we've got here. And so there's my Sahara sand, and I'm going to use my Post-it note here to stamp off, and then maybe stamp off again, so that I end up with ever so faint an image on my paper here. Let me just put my magnet back. Get another clean spot on this piece of paper. Tuck that into the corner, put my magnet down, and then get the faintest image of the flower. And while that is very faint, I'll bring that up so you can see it, it's all that we need. We just want to have an image to be looking at when we're putting some of the other pieces in place here. So now I've got my second stamp here, which is the fill-in. And the first thing I did was stamp that in Blushing Bride. And so what I got was the impression of Blushing Bride. Now you'll see, and I'll bring this up, it doesn't fill in. So one of the things that I did was took a dauber, because I think I liked the darker of the flowers. This is a little fiddly, this card. And I got some red ink on my flowers here, and I put some red ink on this piece, stamped it again, and then used my blender pen to kind of move that color around to fit into the entire part of the flower. And I'm going to add a little bit of the red here to my blender pen, just getting a little tiny bit on here, and maybe concentrating a little bit more red in the center of these flowers. And I know it looks like a hot mess right now, but you'll see why this works in just a minute. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that all of that image, and that's why I did it in Sahara sand first, so that we could really see that image to know kind of where we're filling in and get some of that red there. Okay, then I used this stamp out of the set, which is the leaves, and on this one I used Granny Apple Green. So lots of ink colors to get this exactly the way I wanted it. But in the end, I think it's really pretty. So I dabbed my Granny Apple Green on here. Doesn't look like I got ink all over. There we go. Now, I couldn't do this without the Stamparatus. It would be really hard. So I'm really pleased with that. So there is my Granny Apple Green. And what I'm going to do is take my blender pen again here and kind of move that green around on that image. And I'm going to pick up little tiny bits of that green and fill in a little bit of that, the rest of that image with the green. And you'll see in a minute why that works. So we've got little darker pieces and little lighter pieces. Now that doesn't look like very much, but what we're going to do now is go back to the original image on my Stamparatus, which is this image here. And in order to make this work, what I'm going to do is use my Real Red marker and my Granny Apple Green marker. And I'm going to go around on this image and color in. Got a little something I don't want there. I'm going to color in particularly the roses, and I can see right there I've gotten one of the leaves, and I didn't intend to do that. So I'll clean that off, and I'm going to just get the roses here, and you can see where the leaves are. It's not terribly apparent, but here, 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 and here. So if I'm careful and just get, okay, so I'm going to go back over that again because I need this ink to be fairly fresh here. It's easy on the top because that's all flower, but you can see where you're coloring on the stamp itself to get it covered with the red ink. Then, using my Granny Apple Green, I'm going to pick up the flowers, I mean the leaves here, and color those leaves. And if it's been too long, like when you colored the red, by the time you get the leaves done, then you will have to huff on this to get it to make the image. But I'm thinking I'm going to be okay on this. And now I'm going to restamp this. And I'm going to get that outline over the top. And isn't that pretty? So that's why you want the faint image in Sahara Sand, so you can fill in all the way. Then you can put more red to intensify the color if that's what you want, and then restamp to get the outline again in the colors that you want. Again, a little fiddly, but in the end, I just love the result. So I'm going to set my Stamparatus aside now. And for this piece, we are going to have to fussy cut this one out. So I'm going to take a second and do that. And on the vases, I think I will also fussy cut those out because I want it right up against the black. So I will speed up the video while I do this. Okay, there we have our pieces fussy cut out. So now we are just about ready to assemble. We have one more little bit of stamping left here, and that is this sentiment, "Just for You." And again, I'm going to use my Momento Tuxedo Black here and take my "Just for You," and I'm placing it right up here on the corner in about 1/4 of an inch. And there we have our "Just for You." Now, on the piece of paper here, I just need to use my snail, my piece of polka dot paper here, which I think is really attractive with the red. I love the combination of black and white and red. So in here I am going to set this down so that it absolutely butts up against the edges there, comes across, and then we'll just cut off the excess on this end to make sure we've got a perfect fit. So there we go. That is set to go now. Then I used a piece of our real red 1/8 of an inch ribbon on the top of the polka dots here. And we need a piece that's about just under 5 inches long here. And I'm going to add some tape runner. And on this I'll use my dot runner. For ribbon it seems to work a little bit better. So along the top of the polka dots here, to hide that seam, there we go. And then we can put a little bit of snail on the back to capture the edge of that ribbon there. There we go. And then we're almost ready to assemble the card. Now, the one thing I did do is I used the Granny Apple Green on these leaves, and I used the ink. But for my vase here, I wanted to use the same green, and I used my Granny Apple Green, light Granny Apple Green, and colored in the leaves on my vase. I think it's just, the vase is very pretty. I love the shape of it. It's elegant. And so just adding, nothing fancy, just coloring these little leaves here in the Granny Apple. And I'm going to do 2 of these vases, one for the outside and then one for the inside. I think we're ready to put this card together. All right, so here's my card base, and the very first thing we can do is adhere the base to the card itself, or the layering, red layering piece. And that's going to leave us a nice white border. There we go. Then this piece is now ready to go on the front here. So let's see. There we go. All right, so let me get some snail on this piece and get that mounted on our card base here. There we go. Then it's just a matter of putting a few dimensionals, and I used mini dimensionals on these pieces here, and getting them put into place. Okay, I put my vase as though it were sitting on the top of this little piece of ribbon, and then my flowers I'm going to tuck right over the top of the vase so I'm not looking for any stems. There we go. Now, the other piece that I added to this was a couple of rhinestones, the smaller ones, to the centers of the flowers here. And then I used one of the larger ones right here above the U. And it's a very simple card, but I just love how pretty it is. Okay, the next thing we have for the interior, I have my little 1/4 inch piece of red cardstock. I would have used ribbon, but there's no place to wrap it around, and I wanted to keep this simple. So I put this red piece right down the edge, cut off for a perfect fit here, and then just used a little bit of snail on the back of my vase here, whoops, and put the vase into place right down here at the bottom on the inside. And there we go. That is the card for today. I want to thank you so much for stopping by my YouTube channel today. I do so appreciate it. And you can see these are a little bit more red, and I could have done that a couple of times to get that a little bit darker by using the dauber on the interior here a little bit. But that is the project for today. And let's see, the prize draw for February is the Well Said bundle, which is the in the occasions catalog. It's a $75 or $76.50 value. The stamp set has 51 stamps, and the dies have 24 stamps. So it's a huge set, and it will set you up with sentiments, but for good. And the way to get yourself in the drawing is to place an order on my website, www.lbedinger.stampinup.net, or through my blog, www.inkandingenuity.com. So that is the project for today. And let's see, there's a join offer, $175 worth of product for $99, which goes through the end of March. But the earlier you join, the more time you have to make your first minimum. Because the offer started after the quarter began, the first minimum that one has to make isn't until the end of June. So if you start in February, you still have a little bit of the month of February and March and April, and then the whole second quarter to make your minimum. So it's a wonderful time to join. And like I've had several people take advantage of it, and I'd love to have you on my team. And if you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I'd love to be your demonstrator. So that's it for me today. I'll be back soon with more cards and more projects. Bye!